Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
And someone told me that don't repair and repent. Prepare and prevent. The issue of setting goals, that has impacted me so much in my life. You see, when you set goals, yeah, you have a direction, you know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, then you even don't know when you lost. Of time management. Yeah, time management is a very crucial thing, especially for us, the youth. Yeah, most of the time we say that we still have time, we're still young, yeah, we got a long way to go, but this is the right time to prepare, this is the right time to act, be proactive. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Joshua Gishuru. I'm a student at Chukwuka University, and I'm also a pioneer student here at New Vision School of Leadership. This is my third
year. Good day once again, conference participants. Again, good to be with you on this second session I want to share a thought. I read a passage of scripture I'd read scores and scores and scores of times, of course, before, but it's one of those that just leapt off the page to me when I read it again not very long ago. I'm going to share with you again on this thought of what would I do differently? How would I function differently if I knew now if I knew at that point in time, if I was 22 or 20 years old, what I know now. I'm going to share with you a thought of David perceived he was king. Let me read a passage as we start here from 2 Samuel. It says that, and David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, that he had exalted his kingdom for his people. Now, that may not sound like a particularly staggering or revelatory statement, but you've got to remember at the time that this is written in 2 Samuel, David has already served as the king of Judah for some 7.5 years, and it has probably been 20 plus years since the national prophet Samuel had prophesied over David that he would in fact be king of Israel. So that statement, David then perceives he's king. But he'd already, and that of all of Israel, of the entirety of the nation, but he'd already functioned as a king for some 7.5 years. It had been 20 or more years since Samuel had prophesied over him that he would be king of Israel. So, if David perceives at that moment that he's king, it also reveals that he did not perceive it prior to that. Even though he's functioning in a role, at least in the 2 tribes of Judah, and it had already been prophesied over him that he had walked in or begun to walk in for 20 some years. But it is at that moment that he perceives that he's king. Why? Listen, it took faith for David to slay Goliath. We all know that story, whether you're deep as a Bible student or not, you know the story of David and Goliath. It took faith for David to slay Goliath, but David must grasp his identity, who he really was, before he could take the throne. Let me say that again. It's very important. He exercises faith, certainly, in taking down the massive giant Goliath, but it was grasping hold of his identity, who he really was, before he could actually take the throne. It was easier for David, quite frankly, to defeat Goliath than it was for him to take the throne of Israel. Think about that. It was easier for him in that moment to take down that seasoned giant warrior who'd been a warrior all his life. That's all he ever done. And here David is just this shepherd boy with some stones and a sling. But it was really at that point in time easier for him to accomplish that than it was for him to take his rightful prophesied place seated as the king of all Israel. Watch this now, back again to principles. Faith believes what God can do, but identity believes what God can do through you. Faith believes what God can do. You believe he is capable of doing that, whatever that might be. But you may believe that for your friend, one of your one you've been raised with possibly. You think they are more capable of doing something. You believe they can do that. But identity believes that God can do that same thing through you. See the difference? We can never, again, another principle, we can never truly and completely see ourselves correctly until the Father speaks to us. It takes a father to reveal a son or daughter. The old, watch this now, let me give you a truth. The old doesn't leave simply because we get tired of it. We can't just simply say, I'm tired of thinking this way, I'm tired of feeling this way, which again results in certain ways of which I'm tired of acting that way. I'm just tired of it. Well, the truth is, it doesn't leave simply because we get tired of it. That would be wonderful if that was the case, if it was that easy to do, but it is not. The old, that is who we were, again, what we believed that was incorrect, what we believed that was incomplete, only leaves when a new displaces it, moves it out of its position. The starting point, listen, the starting point always is coming in agreement with what God sees us in us, what he sees in us, and what he says about us. That is always the starting point. What he sees in us and what he says about us. And the only way, principle again, the only way that we empty ourselves of old thinking, again, that results in old believing, and then in turn, old and incorrect action, is by changing what and who we trust. Personal strength can enable us to do many things. I'm just going to grit my teeth and do this and do it out of our soulish own personal strength. That can happen and does happen when we do that, but it cannot empower you to become something new. It'll enable us if just the sheer soulish strength in us can enable us to do some things, but it cannot empower us to become something new. We remain the old, not be transformed into something new. That is, we enter a new season that causes you to draw closer to your destiny. Again, this conference is about defining your destiny. David's history, real quickly, some of you know this relatively or very well, some of you may not as well. He was not the one that Jesse believed that Samuel should anoint as king. He was the complete and absolute afterthought. Jesse, the father, had run all his sons before Samuel, the prophet, who had been directed by the Lord to go to that city and anoint with that golden flask of oil the next king of Israel. That was evident that Jesse had no thought whatsoever that David would be the one chosen. It's evident that the contentions that David has with Eliab, who's the oldest son of Jesse, that they had. Remember when David comes down on the instruction of his father to take provision to his brothers and to Saul, who were in this fight with the Philistines, and of course the Philistine champion Goliath. So when he comes down there to do what his father had told him to do, Eliab, his oldest brother, the oldest brother of all of them, said, what are you doing now, David? So you could, just in that slight phrase, you can feel this tension between Eliab and David. Identity flows from how we see ourselves. We can have people, parents, friends, professors, coaches, say things and do things that, again, depending on what we do or don't do with them, help in framing up who we are. But ultimately, identity flows from how we see ourselves. And if we don't see ourselves correctly, completely, wholly, truthfully, as God sees us and believes for us, then our identity and ultimately then our destiny is going to be diminished. Identity and ultimately destiny flow out of being, not doing. Watch that now. They flow out of being, not doing. Remember, it is that moment that David says he perceives that he is king. Transformation, let me give you some transformation principles. Change says, I am not and must become. I am not and therefore must become. Transformation, however, says, I am and I'm yielding to the process. Did you get the difference? Change says, I'm not this. I'm not this strong, vibrant, confident, accomplished young person who's beginning the journey of my destiny. So I'm going to have to change these things because I'm not that. Transformation says, I'm already those things. They're not necessarily evident yet or fully evident, but I'm in the process of becoming. Altogether different in our viewpoint. One contributes to faith and self-worth. The other tends towards unbelief and a works-centered righteousness, a work-centered approach. I've got to, by my own strength, by my own resolve, by my own intelligence, I've got to change all those things that because I am not this. Where transformation says, I am this, and I'm in the process of this being unfolded in my life, of who I really already am. Change is external, transformation is internal. So we can go about changing external things, and there certainly may be external things that need to be changed, but they ultimately will not stay changed unless internally there's transformation. Who we see ourselves or how we see ourselves correctly, again, as God sees us, declares over us, and who we really are. Number one, in these transformational principles, renewing the mind. In Romans, it says, do not be conformed, don't be molded into the image of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. That's Romans 12. I'm sure most of you have heard that passage before. In many cases, probably many times you've heard it. Let's look at it again. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed. Here's how: by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and the perfect will of God. I will often say to folks, the most important thing next to coming to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, the most important thing as a believing individual that you can do and should do is the constant and continual renewing of one's mind. Because let's be very candid, we bring to our lives, even when we've come to a relationship with the Father through Jesus Christ, all of us bring certain amounts of baggage with us into that journey, varying depending on our upbringing in life and so on, and what has been our history. But we still bring some things that are baggage that we're dragging along initially, largely as a result of thinking that is incorrect, incomplete. Again, what I think will cause belief, certainly beliefs of the heart, the most important area of belief, and those beliefs will always result in corresponding action, as I talked about in that first session. And if the beliefs are wrong, if the thinking is wrong, then the beliefs are going to be wrong. And then as a result, what will have to happen is that reality of my actions are going to be wrong. May not be consistently wrong, but they're going to be wrong enough of the time. The word transformed, if you have never looked at this before, is the word metamorphos, where we get the term, the English term metamorphosis, the changing of something into something else. This is not the kind of transformation where you're attempting to become something you're not. I think sometimes we get caught up in that. I'm attempting to be something that I'm not. Watch this now. This is a very powerful truth. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly. We very often say, even using this term metamorphosis, and from a natural example, we'll use this caterpillar to a butterfly. We will say the caterpillar became a butterfly, when in reality that's not true. The caterpillar did not become a butterfly. The caterpillar was always a butterfly, just in a different state. Did you get that? So the caterpillar didn't become something that it wasn't. It didn't become a butterfly. It was not that it was a caterpillar and became a butterfly. It was always a butterfly, just in a different state. So in your journey, in my journey, in terms of destiny, what he says about us, remember, he had said 20 years at least earlier to David through Samuel, you will be the king of all of Israel. A definitive true word from the Lord via the prophet to David. But it wasn't until that passage that we read that now he truly perceives he was king. But was he always that? Yes. But the reality is there can be, and very often are, components of destiny that were set out for us that we never achieve because we don't perceive. We don't realize that that's who we are. We are in the process of becoming that. It's not something that I'm not and trying to become. Does that make sense? So the caterpillar was a butterfly always, just in a different state. Watch this now, a new way of thinking cannot be contained in an old identity. A new way of thinking cannot be contained in an old identity. So in these early years, as you're launching out, again, still many of you as college and university students, or maybe even high school students at this point in time, and some of you who are beginning now, getting ready to graduate, or you have graduated, beginning the journey in life into careers, that identity, it's crucial that if it does not line up with who we think we are, let me see if I can fix that thing that popped up. It can't be contained in an old method of thinking, an old methodology of thinking. It must be within this new identity. Paul says, here's a principle. The Apostle Paul says, this happens by the renewing of your mind, that being the intellect. I must make my intellect new, so my conscious thoughts are harmonious with the truth of who I am if I'm in Christ. I've got to make my intellect, my thinking, to be consistent and harmonious with the truth of who I am. Revelation, which is truth that has been revealed or uncovered, is the initiator of transformation. When, as it was in a moment of time, even though David had accomplished tremendous historical things in his life prior to that point in 2 Samuel, it was revelation that came to him. I am now king. I perceive that I'm king now. So that is revelation that's been revealed or uncovered, is the initiator of transformation. And transformation is the avenue for manifestation. Transformation is the avenue for manifestation. Second principle, number one was the renewing of the mind. And again, ladies and gentlemen, that's an ongoing process. Still at my age, after all these years of experience and training others and leading, I am still in an ongoing process of having my mind renewed. It's a wonderful journey, but it is a journey of process. So number two, our attitude. Our attitude is an expression of our inner man or woman. Our attitude is an expression of our inner person. Every day, you and I make choices about the attitude we're going to embrace for that day. Again, no matter the circumstances that may come against us that day, the professor may say we didn't do that paper well enough and didn't get the grade that you thought you were going to get on it. Maybe a friend doesn't do what he or she was supposed to do that day. That those circumstances can have impact on us. But the control of your attitude and my attitude, regardless of what's going on around me, is just that. It's under my control. It's under your control about what attitude I will take towards those things, good, bad, or indifferent, coming towards me. Charles Swindoll, a great writer here in our country, said this: I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. Life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I react to that which happens and is happening to me. I believe that's absolutely true. Let me give you a truth that I learned that was revelatory, one of those revelation things that came to me a number of years ago. I found that truth will almost always offend me before it frees me. Let me say that again. Truth will more often than not offend me, make me angry before it frees me. See if this doesn't bear witness with many of you. The truth comes that just I'm not walking in, and first of all, it will make me angry, first and foremost, because I'm not walking in it, and I don't necessarily at that moment want to believe that's true. But as I embrace that truth, as what it is, truth, it will ultimately become freedom for me. Jesus said in John, you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. But that's not intellectual, just simply intellectual assent to, not just mentally agreeing with, but truth that I'm experiencing and walking out. That's when it sets me free. Number three, our lifestyle. Number one was the renewal of the mind. Number two was our attitude. Number three, our lifestyle. Another principle, lifestyles change when embraced truth becomes a way of life. Lifestyles change when embraced truth becomes a way of life. So again, back to that truth that I may not like initially because it runs contrary to what very often I want to do, my flesh wants to do or does not want to do. But when the lifestyle change embraces that truth, it ultimately becomes a way of life. Again, I'm transformed by it. Leonard Sweet, a great writer, says this: faith in God is dangerous thinking. Even more, faith in God is dangerous living. Faith in God is dangerous thinking, but even more, faith in God is dangerous living. Now, that we could spend the next 4 hours trying to unwrap that, but just let me say a little bit about that. What he's saying is that faith is going to to cause me not to do foolish things, but to say, I can do this because this is who I am. This is who God has destined me to be, created me to be. And because of that, I'm going to embrace that truth as revelation, perceive that it is true. Back to the David example, he perceived that he was king, regardless of what may look like in the natural, regardless of the fact I may not have enough money, regardless of the fact that I may not have enough education at this particular point in time, but it causes me to embrace that and live as if it's true. That's what sweet means by dangerous living. John 8:32, I mentioned this earlier. You shall know the truth will make you free. To know the truth means to have intimate interaction with truth. This is truth that has been wrestled with, watch this now, wrestled with, held tightly, and fully embraced. Truth that not just kind of skims over our mind or thinking, but truth again that very often in its initial presentation to me, and maybe that's happening to some of you today as you watch this video. Maybe to some of you this may be a little bit grating, friction-based, and offensive to you initially. I hope you'll step back, sit back, and say, help me to understand this truth, not just simply to discard it. I've got to wrestle with it, hold tightly to it, and fully embrace it, and then it begins the transformation in my own life to know it, experientially know it, and in the experiential knowing of it, I'm transformed by it, and continuing on this journey to achieve the destiny of who I really, really already am, based on what God says about me. John 1:14 says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We saw his glory, the glories of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The only way the world is going to know and see the glory of God is through believers who are manifesting the truth of God's Word in their flesh, in their lifestyles. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what field of endeavor he has you destined to enter into and be a success, an achiever, and a catalyst. Again, catalyst is that component that causes initial, quick, but sustaining change. You are one of those catalyst leaders. So when we do that, that has the power to impact not just our own walk, our own life, our own extended families, close families, but a larger group, and we'll read that in just a second. Here's the truth: when we have been empowered with the identity of who we really are, that is, we're kings and priests if we're in Jesus Christ, kings and priests to God here on earth, like David, we'll perceive we are kings. The result is this empowerment will shift things on earth. I know that's a powerful statement, especially you as a young person may think, now, come on, Roger, you can't mean that I have the potential in me to shift things on earth. Yes, you do. That's the nature of a catalyst leader. Again, no matter the realm or arena in which you are sent into whichever of the mountains, and I don't have time to talk about the 7 mountains of culture, education, the home, religion, economics, politics, arts and entertainment, and so on. He wants you as a catalyst leader to rise to the tops of those and be a change agent, that catalyst leader that causes quick and lasting change, to bring about shift on the earth. Hope you will ultimately let that sink in and begin to believe it. Watch this now. How does that? Let me finish up with this. Let's read this passage again in 2 Samuel that we began with. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel. Watch this now. And that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. He perceives that he is king, established by God himself, but here's the ultimate why: for his people Israel's sake. So it is incumbent upon us, for the sake of others, to become everything he's destined us to become, to do everything he's destined us to do. That's who he's already determined you are, but revelation needs to come and perceive that that's in fact who we are, and because that's who you are, you can live that out, not only for certainly the benefit of your own personal destiny, but as it says here, for the sake of an awful lot of other people who are going to come in contact with you over your life. You're going to help change them, bless them, encourage them, lift them out of their own situations that they don't perceive who they are. Remember that example of metamorphose, that word of transformation. The caterpillar did not become a butterfly. The caterpillar was always a butterfly, just in a different state. That's you. And when you begin to grasp that truth, transformation comes. Not only are you transformed, not just changed, but transformed, but people are positively, lastingly changed because of that happening in and through you. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Again, good to be with you. I hope the next time we're together will be next year, maybe 2021 in Kenya, face to face. God bless you.